joining us? Besides is anybody joining? Because I find there's some names which are not very familiar. I don't know. And Dr. Rosa, is anybody joining because of Helena's session today? I don't know whether there's anybody among the group who was you brought to panelist. Who's this? Can you see this? Indians. So you're going to start. Most respected guest speaker for the day, Dr. Helena Altman, who's a member of the IPASCO. Professor Rosa D'Amico, President of IPASCO. Dr. Rosa Dickett-Miller, Vice President of IPASCO. Dr. Beatrice Ferreira, Vice President of IPASCO. Dr. G. Kishore, who is the Principal Reader Director. All my dear teachers, a warm welcome to one and all to this session of PN Community Coaching Program exclusively for women. Indeed, we are honored to have amongst us a distinguished personality, Madam Dr. Helena Altman from Brazil. I take this opportunity to introduce our dignified speaker. Dr. Helena Altman is a member of IPASCO. She's an associate professor at the State University of Campinas, UNICAM. Ma'am is one of the leaders in studies on women in sport in Brazil. She also is an important link in the exchange of knowledge between India and Brazil. She graduated in physical education and has a PhD in education. At UNICAM, she is a professor in the Faculty of Physical Education and the postgraduate program in education. Ma'am is also the director of the Student Support Service. She has experience in education, physical education, sport, with an emphasis on gender and sexuality. She was the coordinator of the Gender GTT of the Brazilian College of Sports Sciences, 2015-17. She was part of the Body and Education Research Group linked to the Faculty of Physical Education and Focus Research Group of the Faculty of Education. Indeed, it's an honor, and we are blessed to have such a brilliant personality, such as Dr. Helena Altman, for this session. So on behalf of the Ministry of Youth Affairs and Sports, Government of India, Minister of Women and Child Development, lecturer at National College of Physical Education, a warm welcome to our most dignified speaker. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Usha, for your invitation.
Thanks. I also welcome Professor Rosa, President of IPASCO, Dr. Rosa Dickett-Miller, Vice President of IPASCO, Dr. Beatrice, who's the Vice President of IPASCO, Dr. G. Kishore, sir, who's the Principal and Reader Director of SAI, all my dear teachers. I will all say girls, because this topic is going to be very informative, very interesting. Once again, a warm welcome to each one of you. Over to you, Dr. Helena Altman, ma'am, for your session, please. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so thank you very much for the invitation, for the opportunity to be here with Rosa and Beatriz. I also thank you, Beatriz, for the indication of my name to be here. It's a pleasure to be here talking with you. I will start my presentation, just a moment. Okay, there we go. So before I start speaking, I just want to briefly tell that it's a pleasure to talk with Indian people again. I've been in India once in 1996 in Madras, and it was a very nice experience. My first impression about Indian people is that they were very friendly and very smiling people. And so it's nice to be talking with you again in this opportunity. So I'm a professor at Unicamp, which is a big university in Brazil, and I've been researching about gender, sports, and physical education for quite a long time, and I'm happy to share with you a little bit of my researching experience. And I've also built my presentation thinking to talk with physical education teachers, so I hope I can reach you with some images and a little bit about the reality we have in Brazil around sports. So the title of my presentation is Gender and Sports in Brazil, Conquiring the Right to Practicing and Overcoming Inequality. So the idea is that at the beginning, women could not practice sport, or they could just practice some sorts of sports, and they had to conquer that. And nowadays we deal with inequality, and we still have lots of things to do as teachers, women, students, and etc. So I've organized my presentation in these topics. First, I will give you some notes about women's historical conquest to practice sports in Brazil. And I picked up some pictures to show a little bit about that. Then I want to think a little bit about body and gender education in Brazilian culture, how it affects the way students and children are educated and prepared to practice sports, to do physical education classes at school, etc. Then I will show you some two short videos with some examples of physical education classes in Brazil, so you can see children playing and having class in public schools here. And if I still have time, I will show you some data about a research about practice and perceptions of boys and girls about sports and physical activity here. Okay, so the first idea is that the beginning of the relation of women with sport is related to emergency of a new urban culture in Brazil. And that starts around the beginning of the 20th century, 1920, around that, especially in big cities as São Paulo, that especially by the England and other immigrants that are here, they bring these ideas of practicing sports. We had a lot of immigration in this region from Italy and Germany, and this idea comes to spread out around the city. And in this new urban culture, people also start practicing sports. So it gives a new way of sociability that at the first time it's more related to men. But women, they start to get involved in this. And the first way to be involved in sport was as spectators. So they are invited to watch the matches, the plays. And so that's an important way to participate in sports also. And they were also required to practice in modalities that highlighted distinction, grace, beauty, lightness of women movements. So it's not all kind of sports that they are allowed to play or invited to play, but mainly some of the sports were gymnastics, swimming, tennis, volleyball, equestrian, and fencing. They are considered appropriate sports for women because people believed at that moment that this kind of sports would not damage their reproduction system and so on. So here we have some nice picture from this period, like showing women participating, as I said, as spectators. They would watch the plays, and so this is also a moment when we have a new ideas of leisure being present in Brazilian society. This is a picture of a soccer game in São Paulo in 1921. And as we can see, we have many women, even children, watching the match with families, husbands, whoever these people are. But women are also starting to practice sports. So tennis was one of the first sports they played, and we can see here how different it was from nowadays. Well, tennis was considered then a very aristocratic sport for the elites that used to play. It was never a popular sport. It still isn't a popular sport in Brazil. And here we have some women playing, and we can see that the clothes are not so appropriated for practice. So this is something that will change a lot so women can have a more efficient way of playing. Also, volleyball was a popular sport allowed for women. It still is a very popular sport for girls in Brazil nowadays. And here's a picture of fencing. We see men and women practicing at the same field together. Well, this is a picture of a very important sportist in Brazil called Maria Lenk. She was the first woman, not only the first Brazilian woman, but the first Latin American woman to be at the Olympic Games in 1932. She was the only woman that traveled with only men. They went by ship to Los Angeles. And it's interesting that this is in 1932, which is the same year that women conquest the right to vote in Brazil. So women's suffrage in Brazil happens in 1932. So there is not an absolute relation between these two aspects, like having the right to vote and going to the Olympic Games, but it shows a big movement of change in the country. Women are fighting for political rights, for social rights, and then we have this changes inside society. So that's a picture from a magazine from that time. I brought some more here. So here on the right, it's some pictures of people traveling to the Olympic Games before they traveled. And she is a descendant from immigrants, from German immigrants, and she started to learn how to swim in a river, Rio Tietê, which nowadays is a very polluted river, but which was a river very important in São Paulo, that is the biggest city in Brazil, with many sports like swimming and other sports that were practiced. And she was a very popular person in Brazil by that time. And she had many achieves in sports. One more picture of that time. So Maria Lenk is the woman on the left, and then we have some men that were swimming. Another example interesting to think, it's about this athlete, Maria Esther Bueno. She played tennis between 1950 and 1970. She won a lot of Grand Slams in Europe, Australia, and she had a very international and important career. And it's very interesting to, if we compare, for example, I'll come back here, but if we compare the previous picture I showed you with this one, we can see how much tennis has changed the way of playing, the way of dressing, and even how women's body is showed during the sport. And what is important about this athlete, Maria Esther Bueno, is that she changed the way women, Brazilian women, and even in international level, used to play tennis. And she adopted a more offensive, competitive way of playing tennis, which turned out to be more efficient. Was not only a defensive game, and with that, she had very, very good results. And we have no other athlete in Brazil that got so many results as her in tennis competition. Well, now just to tell you a little bit about Brazilian law, we had some laws in Brazil that would forbid women to practice sports. So some sports practices were forbidden for women until 1979. So we had a law in 1941 that said that women are not allowed to practice sports that are incompatible with their nature. Then some reflection interesting to do is, what did they believe was incompatible with women nature? So they thought women were very light persons that were not strong enough to practice some kind of sports, and that would have to be protected. So could only practice sports that would not especially give prejudice to the reproduction system. So there was this idea that the uterus could be damaged by playing sports of impact and so on. And then later in 1965, we have another law. We are at this moment in Brazil through a military period. We have a dictatorial system in Brazil. And they gave some specificities, like they said that all types of fights, as judo, etc., soccer, rugby, and baseball were forbidden for women. I just put some sentence of the law. It talks a little bit more, but that's the main idea. And what's interesting at this law, it lasts until 1979. So that's quite a few time ago. So many of the PE teachers that are teaching at schools at this moment, they lived in this period when there were some laws that prohibited women practicing some kind of sport. So it's a cultural mentality that is still changing. And we see in the country some prejudice about, we still see some prejudice about women who fights or who play soccer, rugby, and etc. Okay, so now I will move to the second topic to talk a little bit about this idea of body and gender education in Brazilian culture. The idea of this concept of body education and gender education, the idea is that our body is educated in very simple and small ways in our lives. What our parents tell us, what they stimulate us to do, to practice, the images we see on TV or at the internet, they are all types of body education, and they can educate us more related to sports or more related to some other things. So to explain this idea, I did in the past a research about advertisement about tennis shoes. Why tennis shoes? Tennis shoes because, or sneakers, however we want to call them. Tennis shoes are necessary to practice a lot of sports. So I made a research looking for some tennis shoes related either to men or to women, and which message would they give to children or to parents about gender and about body education. So this is, I will show some pictures of this brand of tennis, which is a quite good quality of tennis made in Brazil. And these images are from advertisements that they had at Facebook. And I put on the top the translation. We can either think about gender and body education through the image. So how are girls and boys dressed? Which animals do they choose to sell? And also about looking at the sentence that it's written. So this advertisement was directed to parents, for parents to buy tennis for their children. But it's quite amazing. You will see how they try to sell tennis for women, for small girls. These are for children, not for adults. It's not a brand of shoes for adults. So what's written there is details that will make all the difference on her every look. So the idea of the tennis is not about its efficiency for a practice, but about its efficiency of giving a good look, of being well presented in this situation. Here is another one. Just a moment, I have to move something here so I can see better. Okay. So it says details that will make all the difference on her every look. So the sentence is the same, but we can see that it's quite a small girl and it's kind of dressed as a tiger or a panther with butterflies, and she is with skirts, and they are showing this, offering these boots for her to wear. Okay, here again, the same sentence, details that will make the difference on her every look. And we can even see a kind of a sexualized way of looking from the girl. And again, all the time mini skirts, and it's the preoccupation is on how she looks and not what she does. And this is even worse, I would say, this sentence, because it's written, your daughter will draw sights with every step she takes. So they are trying to sell something for parents, telling that the daughter will draw sights with every step she takes. So as we can see, women are always put in a position of being looked, being admired, and being interesting for somebody else, and not about what she actually is doing. And this makes quite a big difference when we compare to the advertisement shown for the boys. So the sentence that is written is, your son one step ahead from the others. And also the picture, the boy is sitting, he wears pants, so he's not showing as much as, it's not showing much of his body as it was with the girls. And it gives more image for me from intelligence than from being beautiful or handsome or whatever. And also going back to the sentence, your son one step ahead from the others, it also gives this idea of competition, which is something that is important for sports, to have to compete, to have this desire to compete. So they are kind of stimulating the boys more to compete than they do to women. But also at the other hand, sometimes this can also be damage for the boys, like being all the time stimulating them for competition and so on, etc. Here is some other related to success. So the sentence is, your son will be successful with every step he takes. So also the idea of being success also relates, it's more, if we make a relation to sports, it's something more important. And the animal, so we have a wolf here, which is an animal that is related to intelligence, rationality. So it's quite different from the animals that were chosen for the girls. So this is kind of the same picture, but with another sentence: stylish shoes for your son to become even more handsome. So that's the only image I found that talk a little bit about being handsome for a man. It's more common to find that for our women. These other two pictures, they are the same tennis shoes, and one is directed for boys and the other one is directed for girls. And what I want to highlight here is, while the girl, she is she's again wearing a skirt. So she's doing sport wearing a skirt, which is not such an appropriated way of dressing to move and etc. And she is playing hopscotch and jump rope, which are sports here in Brazil generally played at home, or maybe you play at school also these sports, but it's something related to the private space, to a more private space. While the advertisement for the boy, it's something in a bigger space. So he is above the city, he's flying over the city, he's dominating the whole city. So what are the ideas that these images they transfer to families, to children, and we have this. So what I want to say is that these are only examples. We have this in other cultural instance of the society everywhere. And also if we see what is written, again, it highlights some ideas that are also important for sport. So lightness, flexibility, and performance to beat records of fun. So the idea of performance record is more related again to sport. And the last one is this advertisement about tennis shoes, a sneaker, which is called the first multi-activity sneaker for children. So it's not said that it's for girls or boys. We could, by the text, we could say that it's related to both of them. But if we see the images of the boy playing different kind of sports here, it's just a boy, it's always a boy, a white boy with blonde hair, which is not so common also in Brazilian culture, but it's the same, there are no girls playing sports here. So again, this different kind of stimulus that children receive while they are growing, and that I think make a lot of difference when they reach school or when they are bigger, and the opportunities also they have. Another example that I brought to think about this different body education, we can see throughout these characters that are present in at least in Brazil, in children's day life. So if we think about Spider-Man, it's a very sportive, he's an athlete, he can jump, and you play with him moving the body a lot. While if we compare with Snow White is a princess, and she has a fight with another woman that makes her go to the forest, and then she's very fragile and she needs to be protected. So she is protected by the dwarfs that receive her in the house, and she kind of can be a mother inside the house, and she is saved again by another man. So these little stories, or here in Brazil, it's common that young kids, when they have birthday parties, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years old, they choose characters for the party. So it's common that we find children that the whole party is decorated by the Spider-Man, for example, or by Snow White, or any other character. So the idea of playing and pretending being either Spider-Man or either Snow White or any other character also is educating children in different ways by gender and also in their body education. And the last example of this that I want to show you is about toys. So I have some pictures there, and I even took some toys to show the difference. Like this toy, it is directed for a boy, the Max Steel. I don't know if the toys are the same in India, but they are quite international. Here in Brazil, they come from United States or are made in China. But this toy, he can move a lot, which is the same. Some of them are on the screen also. He can move his articulation in all different kinds of way. So when someone is playing with a toy like this, is playing of moving, of flexibility, of being strong, or of jumping somewhere, or fighting, etc., which is quite different when you play like with a doll as Barbie, which is produced for girls, and she quite can't move. She can sit, and that's it. The idea of playing with Barbie, you give different characters, not by the way she moves, but by the way she dresses. So while you change the dresses, you change the character. You make her being a teacher or a doctor or a mother, whatever. And so this different ways of educating children's body. And the last comprehension I want to do is about the cars, the little cars. So if we compare like a small car directed for boys to play, like these ones are from a collection that is named Hot Wheels. Even the name of the car, Hot Wheels, gives the idea of the car being fast and running, a speed car. And when we see toys, cars related for girls, they don't have this idea of competition. They have an idea of leisure and so on. Something we could also think is about the color. Lots of toys are pink, and when they are for girls, so it also makes a separation, creates some stereotypes about boys and girls that I think impact in children's education quite a lot. Okay, so this is a little bit what I spoke. The idea is it's a little bit to think in Brazilian culture how education is built in relation to gender, body, sports, so these things that are important for us. Now, I would like to show you 2 videos about physical education classes in Brazil, and I will ask Usha to help me to show them. And so you will see some images. They were students from the university. They were my students that went for a school for a teaching internship. And so they made this, it's a homemade video. It's not something professional, but it shows you will see children playing in Brazilian schools. So I think they are nice videos in that way. And we can also see that despite we have this culture that many times put children apart, in these class situations, they are playing together very close to each other, and we don't see quite difference between their body. And that's because teachers were promoting a more inclusive way of teaching to them. So I think I have to stop here.
Yeah.
Just a moment. Okay, here.
And can you see the screen? Was there another video? Was there one more video?
Yes.
You could send the link.
Yes. Yes, I can send you again, just a moment. Okay, I sent you at the chat, Usha.
You can see it? You can see it?
Okay.
Wonderful. Yeah.
So I think the videos gives a little bit of the idea of how physical education classes are at this moment thought in Brazil. And we teach not only sports, but other physical activities like dancing and gymnastics and etc. And also there is an idea that we should not only teach how to play sports, but we should teach students about sports and about gender relations. So on the second video, there was this example that they were trying to build another reference of women playing sports, that they are not only sensitive, but that women can also be strong. So they showed some images of Brazilian soccer athletes. And they also used children. I don't know if that was possible to understand, but they also used a story, which is from Ruth Rocha, which is a famous writer, Brazilian writer. And she tells a little story about girls at school that were fighting to have equal rights from boys. And they also used sport for that, because one of the things is that women could not practice sport. So it's a very nice story. So in this way, they try to reach students with other reference about how to play and etc. I had some other data, something more specific about the research. I don't know how much we still have time. If I
We
should
do
talk
have
about...
your presentation is over for that. You have the next, right?
Yes. So
you could continue the presentation at the end. You could put the other.
Okay. Okay. So okay, so I will then show you a little bit of a research that has been done with Spain, comparing the frequency and some aspects of Brazilian students practicing sports with Spain. So it's interesting we can either see the comparison between boys and girls and with another country, and that maybe would be interesting to have this comparison with India or with other countries. But let me show some aspects. So the aim was to analyze gender relations in physical education classes, problematizing situations of equality and inequality, as well as relationship youths have to physical activity and sports. So we made a comparative analysis either by gender and by region, regards to the following aspects. So the regularity and frequency of physical activity and sport, expectations for future practice, perceptions of corporal competence and pleasure with physical activity and sports, interest and valorization of physical education, and perception of social aspect received from social support received from physical education teachers. So I will show you some results. This is just a little bit about the method. So we had quite a big number of questionnaires, which was applied for students from 8th and 9th grade with an average age of 13 years old. 13.6 in Brazil and 13 in Spain. And the data is from the metropolitan region of two cities. One is Campinas in Brazil, which is a city of 1 million citizens, compared with the data from Madrid, which is a bigger city, 3.3 million citizens. Around 52% of them were girls and 48% of them were boys. And they also had around 50% female teachers and male teachers. So the results are of a questionnaire with 15 closed-ended questions. And I'll just show you some of them. So this is the data about the average of days a week that they practice physical activity or a sport for at least 3 minutes. So if we see, just take a look here in Brazil, we will see that the boys, they say that they practice a physical activity or a sport 3.4 days a week, while the girls talk about 2.6 days a week. So we can say that the boys are having more opportunity to practice and to develop their abilities. This in Brazil. And if we compare to Spain, we can see that in Spain, they practice more than they do in Brazil. So children would be having better opportunities there than they do here in Brazil. This is about the percentage of girls that practice physical activity or sports for a given number of days a week. So they would have to say how many days a week they practice a sport for around 60 minutes. So these are the results for girls. So comparing again Brazil and Spain. So we see in red here that Spain is more in the middle, like the main results are in the middle. The girls, they 18%, 16%, and 14% say that they practice 4, 5, and 6 days a week. While in Brazil, we have more in the extreme. So some of them practice 7 days a week, while others practice none or 1 or 2 days a week, etc. So even though we have in the media, the difference is not so big, but because some of them are playing more than the others, we also have a bigger inequality. And it happens again with the boys. We have the same pattern that Brazilian boys are more in the extreme levels than the Spanish boys here. This is another aspect. So days of physical activity or sport practice during the last weeks. The last week organized in 2 groups. So we organized who said that had practiced 3 in the last week, how many people had practiced 3 or more days a week in the last weeks, and how many people had practiced up to 2 days a week in the last week. So the dark color is about Spain and the light color is about Brazil. So this is the girls. So we can see that the Spanish girls have practiced more in the last week than the Brazilian girls. And if we compare this image with the boys, we see that if we compare gender inside the same country, there is also an inequality that girls relate to have practiced less than boys. This happens at both countries, in Brazil and also in Spain. This is interesting, is about the future expectation of a regular physical activity or sport for the next year. What are their expectations, if they are certain that they will practice or if they think they will probably practice. So we have a high number of girls that say that probably yes, that they will probably practice. So it gives also the idea that they have the intention to practice. They even imagine they will practice, even though when we see the results about the past year, it's not as good as that. So they probably are not being able to practice as much as they thought they would. And so the Brazilian girls are more here in the probability. They think that they will probably practice, and they are bigger than the Spanish girls. The next one is about the boys, and the difference, if we compare boys with girls, the difference is that the girls, they were mainly here. They think that they will probably practice physical activity or sport last year. And the boys, they are more certain about it. So they say that they certainly will practice some sport for the next year. This is another data that I think it's interesting to see how we can encourage students at school, because it's related about the perception of pleasure, corporal competence, interest, values, and useful of physical education. How do they feel if they feel pleasure practicing sports, doing physical education, doing activities? How do they think about themselves if they have competence of doing exercises and movement and playing sports, etc.? If physical education is something that makes that they have interest about, if they are interested in physical education, and how do they value, how important they think that it is. Here again, it's compared Spain with Brazil. So we can see that Spanish girls, they have a better perception about pleasure, and all the others, the Brazilian girls have a better result. They have a bigger perception of corporal competence and etc. But they have lower results when compared to the boy. So this is related to the boy. So we can see that it's around here 6, and when we come back to the previous, it's around 5. It's more to the 5. So the perception in these aspects of the girls are not as good as for the boys. Okay, so I'm coming to the end. So I would like to, about this data, I would like to say that there are gender disparities that youth have with regards to physical activity and sports. We find more positive results for boys. They have a greater regularity and a greater frequency of practice, and also a more favorable results for Spanish population than for Brazilian population. But even though what it's important to say that is for the entire population, the frequency of practice was lower than the recommended by the World Health Organization. So children are practicing less than they should. And well, now with the pandemic, I'm quite sure that even much lesser than they were when this data was collected. They have a lower frequency and regularity of physical activity and sport practice that seems to be related to a lower perception of pleasure. So one thing would be, how do we improve pleasure with this activity for this competence? And a greater perception of corporal competence and of interest in and valorization of physical activity by Brazilian boys and girls. Even though this perception of corporal competence and of interest is bigger, it's not sufficient to ensure a greater adherence to the practice of the physical activity. And finally, I organized some challenges for sport practice at school that I think are important for a Brazilian population at this moment. One aspect that we realize at school is about gender inequalities occupying physical spaces at school. Usually we see boys during breaks or etc. They occupy a bigger space at school, playing soccer mainly, but also some other kind of sport. So they also have inside school more opportunity to develop their body, etc. We also find that girls have a lower participation during physical education classes. It's common when we visit schools, or some research have found that girls are sometimes they don't practice, they stay beside the court saying that they have a headache or something, that they don't want to do classes. So they also participate in a less effective way inside the activity. We also need more competitive opportunities for girls, like having opportunities not only to practice sports, but to have competition and to develop in sport in a more complete way. Something that I also is important, and I think the pictures about the shoes advertisement help us to think about that, is that we should develop a body relation, not only in a statical way, but also in aiming ability and playing, so that the girls could have a relation with their body, not only thinking about how their body are shown and seen, but how efficient their body can be and how this can be something pleasurable and etc. Which is, it could be related to this idea also to develop confidence on their own body efficiency, that they can be confident that they can do things. And I think teachers have a lot to help them with this idea. And last, opportunities to experience pleasure practicing sports. So how can this be something pleasurable for them that will be will make them addicted for practicing sport? So that's what I have prepared. So I thank you very much, and I apologize for my English absence of words sometimes, but it was a pleasure talking to you. Thank you. Namaste.
Thank you, Dr. Helena. Thank you so much. Wow, it was such a wonderful session, and especially I think a lot of things emerged, and there were certain things that were very important, significant. We talk of it. Such a wonderful session was it. And in terms of language, I don't think, because you did excellent. It was wonderful. I didn't know that you had a problem as such. Let me just see if there are some questions, but before that, I'm just searching for some questions. Could I request maybe Dr. Beatrice, you could start, then followed with that I'll ask a question later. Dr. Beatrice?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, you could put your remarks and ask if something, then I'll follow with the questions.
Okay, well, thank you, Helena, for your presentation and to bring some of the Brazilian culture to us. I think it's very important to share these cultural systems and how the importance of being a teacher, and also the difference of the children and how we raise children, and the impact of the media. The media has a very important impact on the families, and to sell things, and with this beautiful image. And then you put the girls in one place that they could be in another place. And I think that's something very, very impressive. Yes, when you showed all the history in the beginning that the sports were forbidden. Yes, when I studied physical education, that's my time. I remember my professor. I studied in São Paulo, at the State University of São Paulo, and I remember my professor saying, "Wow, no, soccer is not for women. It's no, basketball. Well, if you play basketball, you have to. It's not very good too. Volleyball was more acceptable, but basketball, no." And then I'm glad that the world changed, the society changed because of the women. I remember that I have seen some of the women from at that time, from 7th and 8th, saying that how hard it was for them to play basketball. They had a lot of prejudice. They thought that was for men. No, and they had to fight, and they suffered. That was suffering. The soccer too, you can see the soccer, that the same problem with soccer. And And I can see that how important is to be a very good teacher in the school. When you show, your students, you are preparing your students to be a very good teacher. It's with conscience, to be more inclusive for boys and girls. And I see some of the wheelchair person. I don't know if it is a boy or girl. I didn't see. But anyhow, it's very important. And we can finally see that how the physical education and the teaching can be advocacy to change the gender imbalance between boys and girls. For sure that you have to fight, to struggle for it. But I'm glad that the world is changing. And when you compare the Spain and the Brazil, you can see that the law in Brazil, they change. That's not very good. Sometimes when I used to teach physical education, it was 3 times a week. Now we have 1 time a week, or sometimes 2 times a week. And in Spain it's a country that is more stable, and problem, that's why they have more chance to have. Well, congratulations, Lena. Congratulations.
Thank you, Dr. Beatrice. There's one question from Sonia Wilson. How can we help, Dr. Helena, how can we help and encourage our girls while in higher classes, PE teachers, when the PE teachers are male, and at times they feel very shy? We find male PE teachers handling the senior or the high school PE classes. So in such situation, girls often are reluctant. So what is the possibility? How could we manage that?
Well, thank you for the question. Here in Brazil, classes of physical education, they are not separated. Boys and girls have classes together with the same teachers. And sometimes they have classes with women, sometimes with a man. So it's not separated that boys have with men and girls have with, with a woman. We see some difference in some experience of training, like when you are training in a specific modality, like training volleyball or training basketball, then it's more likely you find men training men or women, but it's not likely to find women training men. So that's still inequality in our sportive system here in Brazil. I think that the teachers, they are big reference for the students. So the students, they also they get inspired by the teachers for doing things. It's not only what the teachers teach them to do and show them how to do, but the way teacher acts and deal and the examples they give, etc. All this is playing an important role in education. Another thing that I would say is that in Brazil, we have a phenomenon that, especially for small kids, schools are they have more female teachers than male teachers. So when children are younger, most of them might come to I don't know, until they are 14, they might not have had class for a man, just with a woman. So they are, what I want to say is that children are more educated by women than by men. And sometimes the first male teacher that kids have is exactly the physical education teacher. So I think also for girls, it might be an important reference to have class with with a male teacher. It will give another reference different from a female teacher, but it will give opportunities for learning different things. So that's a little bit what occurs to me to comment.
Thank you. There was another question by Ms. Sunita Kumari. How will we change the attitude towards physical education subject? Because most of the other subject teachers consider the other subjects more important as compared to physical education. So do you have any suggestions in terms of How can you make, what are the strategies or what could be done so that FISB also is able to get its importance, its due status?
Yeah, thank you again. I think it takes a long time for changing things. Sometimes we want them to change faster than they can. As Beatrice said, she had classes, she was at the university while we still have laws prohibiting some practices for women. I was at school at that time, and I also remember not having opportunity to play soccer and to play basketball. And when I was doing my master's degree in 1998, I already saw girls playing lots of soccer at school, and many of them called them, the expression translating to English is marry man, because Mary is a popular name. So they were kind of called men because they were playing soccer. So they were making a relation between playing soccer and telling that women were masculine because of that, or that they were homosexual. So it was a lot of prejudice about that. And nowadays, I have students at the university that play soccer, and that's not such a big deal as it was in the past. So I think things, they change in a slowly way, but they do change. And I think Beatrice said that while she was speaking, how teachers can make the difference, a big difference for a student's life when they give equal opportunity, when they have they create a class that promotes inclusion and not inclusion, that doesn't promote segregation or doesn't promote stereotypes about women not being accepted, that women could not do something. So I think these are way of changing society, and things will get better, hopefully.
Thank you. Another question by Mamta Yadav. In India, most of the household work is shouldered on women. This also could be a reason of less involvement in sport activities. So how about women in Brazil? Because here, before I could start, I could say in India, we're very lucky and fortunate. We are blessed and fortunate because we didn't have so much of discrimination in terms of we have this freedom for performing. But still, there are certain cultures, it could vary from different cities, urban areas, culture to culture. Still, there are certain restrictions imposed in some of the cultures because India is a country with a lot of diversity. That's one of the issues. But women, basically, they say your responsibility is for the household chores and for this. So then they may not be able to get in. So the preparation for the motherhood or whatever is. So the involvement in physical activity is less. So what about the women in Brazil is a question raised.
Yes, and unfortunately, I have to say that here it's the same thing. We have some research, some data that shows that what less has changed in the last years is the division of household and responsibility by educating children. We have improved with a less inequality of salary between men and women in Brazil. This is quite getting better. Women are also being able to go to the universities, to be well graduated and to get inside, to have important jobs and etc. But this is the same thing doesn't happen inside people's homes. So women are still in the last, there was a big research from Brazilian government that compare some responses in the last 10 years, and men still declared, I don't know exactly, but it didn't change how many hours per week they say they are involved with household activities and children education. So we can see difference in a little bit in culture and in some region and in some economic level, but there is a lot of inequality still regarded to that. And I think the question already gives the answer that this is related to how much time you have for leisure, how much time you have to do physical activity. So when people grow up, when they are adults, there is a lot of inequality between men and women of regularity and frequency of physical activity and sport practice. And something else to add to that is that we have inequality related to gender, but we also have a big inequality in Brazil related to race. So Black women are the ones who practice less sports in Brazil, related to how much they gain to the salary. So people with lower salary have less opportunity to practice because they have all this household activities. They take longer to move to commute from their job to their houses to work. And it also is related to scholarity. So people who have studied more, they tend to practice activity more than men. And this also decreases with the age. So also we see that while people get older, they start practicing less, which is also something we should help to change.
Thank you so much, Dr. Helena. I think it was wonderful because here in India, our biggest challenges, even though we have everything with us, documentation research is comparatively less. We say less, but we don't have the number as such it is. So I think since you brought out the research, that makes it much more meaningful. But, we all say it's there, but where do we see? What about the statistics is what actually we lack. So I think you have inspired us to take into some work so that we get some figures and numbers to speak about rather than simply telling the number is this. Indeed, it was such a wonderful session. Over to you, Dr. Rosa Dickit-Miller, ma'am, for your remarks, please.
Thank you, Helen. It was a great presentation and showing quite clearly how gender is produced within daily routines, if it's advertisement or if it's in other areas. And you showed quite clearly also about the rooms and spaces children are using. We did some similar analysis, analyzing space, which is used by children in recess and in breaks. And there were significant differences between girls and boys, that was clear. But on the other hand, we did some interventions looking on the attitude of the PE teachers, looking at the attitudes of the pedagogues and as well of the children. Because in some interviews, the small girls told that the boys need more place, that's for sure. And we were really astonished that the small girls in the age between 6 and 10 already had this in their mind, that the boys need the places. And we did big interventions, and at the end, there were differences afterwards in the after intervention situation, and it's changing, but it's a hard work. And one issue was that we were trying to implement gender issues and intersectional studies into the study program. It was obligatory for our students. So my question was, how is gender integrated within your curriculum for the students, for the ongoing PE teachers, for example? How could they learn about what to do in school? Because you had such a nice figure showing what has to be done in school to change the situation. So my question would be, is this obligatory for your students? Do you have gender seminars for them? What are you doing in Brazil to change it? Thank you.
Thank you, Rosa. Well, I will answer in two ways. One way related to my university. At the moment, I give an elective discipline that is not mandatory, so students can choose to do it or not, that talks about gender relation in physical activities. And it's quite a nice moment during this period where we talk a lot about these things, but since it's not mandatory, probably the ones who more needed to do it don't come and don't do it. So we are trying to change that in our curriculum at the university. And that's not so easy also because we have to deal with other professors at the university, and not all of them think this is such an important subject. But we are improving, and maybe by the next year, it will be a mandatory discipline. So all the graduate students that graduate in physical education at Unicamp will have to study this. This is one thing. The other thing, in a more global level, all over the country, we had some years ago a lot of opportunities to debate about this gender
Can't
issues.
hear you. Is it only here?
Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Yes? Okay. So what I was trying to say is that maybe 4 or even more years ago, there was a moment in Brazil where our federal government was giving opportunities to develop research about gender issues, to develop courses to teachers at school from different disciplines related to gender issues. But nowadays, our government, he doesn't want us to talk about that. He says that this is damaging the children, that is, and it's a very difficult moment because many teachers at school are afraid about talking about gender and women inside school because they fear to be persecuted about federal government or about other instances that think that this is an ideological discourse and that women should wear pink and men should wear blue. And so it's a quite difficult moment in Brazil right now related to issues that doesn't allow us to improve as much as we think we could. And so this is a little bit of the situation. So thinking about the university where people are graduated to be PE teachers, some universities
Maybe
have
I can't hear you. Is it my computer? Maybe is it still my computer?
Yeah, we do understand.
Yes.
Mm.
Well, so that's it. Some universities have this subject about gender inside the course, and some don't. So it depends a little bit on the university.
So thank you so much. It shows that it's very important to have political background on this issue as well, and you have to consider how to empower the PE teachers as well, because it doesn't help them to force gender if policy is making lots of pressure. So
yes, yeah, I
your
totally agree.
information.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Rosa. Thank you for this valuable input you put across to us. So maybe Dr. Helena should be sharing certain, and even Dr. Rosa to share, because we have a government supporting us a lot. So please do guide us and help us so that whatever is possible we could do, and we could reach out to more number of masses. So I think here we have nearly 10,000 women teachers itself. So I think that's a very important thing. And if you could share some of the things which we could do it, I think we are very supportive government. So, and we have other ministries coming along with us. So that's going to help us a lot. Thank you so much for this. And now, as I said, we would have a session with the adolescents. We expect nearly 10,000 adolescent children coming with us. So this topic of yours is going to be still at most importance, because if we can bring change in their attitude, then it's the future of the country which is coming in. So I think that's a great opportunity which we are getting, because the National Health Mission is coming in to picture that. Thank you so much, Dr. Rosa. And over to the president of IPASCWay, Dr. Rosa Lopez D'Amico, ma'am, for your remarks.
Thank you. Thank you, Helena, for such a wonderful presentation, very interesting. And it's always an issue when we speak and we refer to this topic, because people normally don't pay attention to words and to language. And what you presented here means the theory indicates how important images and language is. in order to understand what happens in a culture and how that impacts in a culture. So this is a good reminder, like to be aware of how we use words, how we use language and images, okay? So, and I know that there is a whole school that study this process, and it is quite important with your example that we push and we promote more women to work in that topic, because then it will make us be aware, I mean, how precise that we have to be when trying to also support all the programs, okay? So thank you very much for raising this topic related with the relevance of words and how culture as well gets impact or grows by the influence of goes around. I also have to say that when I study the Latin American participation of women in sport, I always get impressed because Brazil has this law that prohibits women to practice on sport until very recently. Well, recently in history, I mean, I'm not talking about the 70s. But then the jump and the way you manage all those women to practice those sports, and then it was fantastic. I mean, when you compare, I mean, how recently it was that law that prohibited, and then what happened afterwards. So the change is impressive. And I think this is so important. And it's a demonstration like, okay, how wrong the policy was and how pushy the women were to start going back to that. So if you can talk a little bit about it, it will be quite interesting because it's a huge change. It's a huge jump that you did in short time. Now, you also mentioned about the reality of teachers and kids having physical education, mostly with female teachers, and in primary, which was very interesting. I wonder, is it the primary teachers, the general teacher who teach them physical education, or it is a specialist teacher for physical education for primary level? I have just that doubt. And I also have to say that I enjoy very much the videos. And you know why? Because the videos are a good example of the incorporation of quality physical education dimensions. Because it's inclusion, it's gender, it's space, is to have everybody in there, but also the dimension of how important physical education is to all areas of knowledge, which was a wonderful example that you provided, like with geography one. So thank you very much, because I think, I mean, these videos can be used in order to make that as an example of some of these aspects we have been talking in this batch, but also in previous batch related with QPE, okay? So thank you very much. And if you can just make some comments, I appreciate it.
Thank you, Rosa, for your words. About the teachers for the primary school, by law, it's not mandatory that you have a physical education teacher in that level. But what happens is that especially private schools for primary, for children, for small children, they have physical education teachers like going once a week to give some classes. It's quite common also to find that they have a man to have judo classes and a female teacher to have ballet classes for kids around from 3 to 5 years old. So this still happens, but sometimes you just have one teacher that gives a class for all children. And in public primary schools, this varies a little bit. Most of schools don't have a physical education teacher, but some of them do. Even some public schools do, and then they have usually like once a week a class or something like that. And so this is one thing. And about the importance of the change in such a short time, I agree with you. And it's interesting to hear this from a Latin American person from another country that looks at us with a positive way. I think that's good also. But yes, I think it has changed a lot. And we see women practicing all sports, all modalities of sports nowadays. And I think what for me is interesting to think related to that is maybe it's a little bit the idea I wanted to give when I said that the same year that women have the right to vote in Brazil, a woman goes to the Olympic Games. Is the idea that she could go to the Olympic Games because she made her body able for that. It's like a political issue that is built not only with ideas, but sometimes with your own body, with practicing, with exercising. And while you do that, you also have an opportunity to show that you can do different things and you can be in different places. And it's not because that you are a woman that you cannot do something like that. So I think this has changed because of many reasons. I think because of the athletes, because of physical education teachers that helped people to get there. But we still have quite to go. Like, for example, we have more women as athletes, but when it comes to coaches, the inequality is higher, or referees, we have a high inequality of gender. So there is still space to make it better than it already is. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank
Rosa.
you very much.
Thank you so much. Even Dr. Helen, I was about to say this because you brought in this gender reality. I find now most of the parents are trying to make young girls or boys, girls especially, they look more than the age, so actually be inviting into problems which most of them do not realize. So it was a very good thing which you brought in terms of the body relation. And it's a very important message given to our PE teachers. So because you only see from physical activity, but I think you get out of that and you brought in how best we could educate. And it's a very important thing which I think we also should start incorporating in our curriculum. Thank you so much for, it's not just giving a lecture, but instilling in certain things that we can, opening up doors for more things to come in. Thank you, ma'am. Dr. Kishore, sir. Sir, we have Dr. Helena from Brazil. And she, ma'am, has touched upon a very important topic, as you already heard it. And Dr. Kishore sir is the principal and regional director of the Sports Authority of India. So, for your remarks, please.
Thank you, Dr. Helena, ma'am. Atman, Associate Professor, State University, Campinas. And this is something which we were eagerly looking upon, because this is something which, as rightly Dr. Usha has mentioned, meant for our women physical education teachers and community coaches. And India, there is, we've got a large sector of physical education professionals from this and ladies, and who need to be updated on the skills. So I'm sure that today's your session would have enlightened them and also on their skills. And I think the deliberations I could not be a part, so I am not able to speak much. But I am sure that this would have definitely benefited and that will enable our physical education teachers, women teachers, and community coaches to perform better. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, sir. We have a feedback right now. May I request you all to kindly put in the feedback? Yeah, before we go, just last. We have the feedback, so I request. Please fill in the feedback. So in the meantime, ma'am, I think you can see the feedback form. Can you see the blue lines on it? Dr. Helena, ma'am, can you see it? Can't see it. They can't see it.
No, I just see the questions.
I think maybe none of them can see it. Fine. So I think it's been very excellent. So most of the, it's been how accurate the session was. How did the session go compared to expectations? Very excellent. And I think indeed the session was really very informative and which has got a lot of practical implication. And as suggested, I think please do
Okay.
guide us so
Now
that
it's showing.
now
Now
it's
I can
showing.
see.
Yeah, it's Pranesh again who was helped. Thank you, Pranesh, for bringing in. And we have a feedback, and we'll send you a copy of the feedback since the numbers is big. So we'll send you the feedback too, so
Okay.
that that can be of reference to you with this big number of our women teachers. And we look forward to support from you in terms of the elective or what the subjects, because we are also a physical education college. So we would like to have what could be incorporated. And we are really happy with the interns. The kind of project that you took up was very interesting. So from the skill you have come out, I think now we also will introduce such concepts into our system. And Rosa Dikatmila ma'am, we are waiting for the safeguarding small booklet. I think it's I request you if you can we can work together so that come out with a small booklet. Maybe you can come from your Pascoway side for us on the safeguarding of sport. We can start with the workshop because that's required for us. We are yet to have something in our country. That's it. So the sessions have been excellent. We have nearly 2,700 participants who have voted. And it's been an excellent session. And you're with us for the first time. That's I need to thank Beatrice for having introduced you to us. So I talk of Brazil, I think the people all think of soccer, so it's something which everybody are crazy for, and that's great. You were in India earlier, you said, so hope you came to Chennai, but we are very close to it. We are in Kerala, which is very close to Madras. You said Madras or Chennai where you were. So we are very close to that place. So we wish each one of you could always come to us and hope to see you all physically too. So we come to the end of the session. On behalf of the Minister of Youth Affairs and Sports, Government of India, Ministry of Women and Child Development, led by National College of Physical Education, a big thank you and hats off to our most dignified speaker. Ma'am, thank you so much for giving us this valuable input and information. And I'm sure this can be a real change maker because you have instilled in us that I think we should not leave it. Go ahead, fight for it. Thank you, ma'am, for giving this message to us. I'd like to thank Dr. Rosa Lopez D'Amico, ma'am, who's the president. I say she's the Iron Lady who moves, who made it truly international. Now we have crossed more than 60 international speakers with us. It's all because of Rosa ma'am who made this such a wonderful thing, and your presence does make a difference. Thank you so much, ma'am, for supporting this PE program, and with your mission and with Pascoway, I think we are growing strong. Thank you so much, madam. I'd also like to thank Dr. Rosa Dikatmila, ma'am, for your gracious presence. Your presence does make a difference because you're the vice president and presidents of Pascoway here. Thank you so much, ma'am, for being with us, supporting us, and especially for the women folk. I think it's again, you are a source of inspiration. Thank you so much. I'd like to thank Madam Beatrice, the great anthropologist, and who pulled Dr. Helena into it. And thank you so much. Because for anything, we just look up onto you, but you're there to help us and to see that how good a program goes, and you really care for us. This is what you see. Thank you, ma'am. I'd like to thank Dr. G. Kishore, sir, who's the principal and the regional director, and a person with a vision, or to take this LNCP to greater heights. Thank you so much, sir, for supporting us and also helping to make it truly international. I'd like to thank Dr. Sanjeev Patil for being the co-host. I'd like to thank Pranesh Harihar for the technical assistance. I'd like to thank all my dear teachers. I know it's been tiring, but it's just this week more because we end up with this week. But be with us, and you are the heart and soul of this program. You're the agents for change, and we have a huge responsibility. So thank you so much, one and all, and namaste. Tomorrow we have a very good session. We're going to again have a session by the president of WASM Sport Management. Dr. Karen will be with us. So I request all of you to kindly be present. Okay, bye. High five. Bye-bye. Thank you, Dr. Helena. Thank you, Rosa, Beatrice, Rosa.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.